Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another live stream, the final live stream of 2022. And what a year it's been for Chelsea, becoming world champions, being sanctioned, new owners, new manager. We had the Romelu Lukaku interview, Graham Potter's in store now. And so I can't wait to see what 2023 has to hold. If it's been half as exciting as 2022, then I think we're in for a good one. And hopefully we can, push towards those Champions League places, get some big signings in January. And 2023 could be a fruitful year for us. But the Blues travel up to the City Ground to take on Nottingham Forest tomorrow, 4:30 kickoff. It's going to be a tough game. Forest, despite their position in the league, have been a lot better at home than they have been on their travels. And Chelsea have had a tricky run of results. We have struggled to pick up the points before the World Cup. The run was awful. Obviously, back to winning ways against Bournemouth. But this is going to be a tricky time. It would be great to start the year with 3 points, particularly with Spurs dropping points, with Newcastle dropping points today as well. It's a chance to go 5 points off the top 4 with a win tomorrow. And I'm delighted to be joined by Wolverine from Forest Fan TV. Mate, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to getting stuck into this one. How would you assess Forest's kind of first half of the season, I suppose? Obviously, back in the Premier League for the first time in 20 odd years, had to bring a lot of players in, well publicised, well over 20 players coming in, essentially a brand new squad. Despite sitting 19th in the table, there is a League Cup quarter-final to look forward to. Against Wolves, which could be very winnable, and there's a semi-final potentially up for grabs there. Would you have taken this at the start of the season, or are you a little bit disappointed? Do you want a bit more from the first 6 months or so?
Well, firstly, happy New Year for tomorrow, mate, and happy New Year to everyone watching. It's been just as crazy a year for us as it has been for you guys, with sitting at the start of last season, bottom of the championship, to where we are now in the Premier League, 19th. Yes, I know, but ask us this question this time last year, and would be happy to be in the Premier League and happy to be competing, at the highest division. So, but as a Forest fan, still, you always want to see your side win. And have I been happy with our current position? Honestly speaking, mate, no. I think we are better than what the table suggests, but the table doesn't lie. We're still a team in transition. We're still a team gelling together. As you mentioned, 23 odd players with more coming in over January. But it needs to happen fast. The problem with the Premier League is not a forgiving league. And if you're not at it, and if you can't get up to the pace quick enough with it, then potentially there's only one place you're going to end up going. And that is the worry for the Forest fans. We're not deluded. We know, the task in front of us, but we need to have a real strong start. Well, continuation of the second half of the Premier League, and we got to hope that the team gels and that the home form, as you mentioned, we're a lot better at home than we are away. In fact, it's yin and yang. We've not won on the road yet. We've picked up 2 points. It's home that's going to save us, and it's home where I think the focus is going to be for us. So could have done better. I mean, I've tallied up before, in the 6 week break over the World Cup, where you're there thinking about your beloved club, and you do, with hindsight, go back and think, if but and maybe, if we hadn't messed up against Bournemouth when we were 2-0 up. We were up against Fulham. We didn't concede a late goal against Everton. You start to add those points together. I'm sure you guys have done it, but more at the top end of the table. Yeah, absolutely. And you look and you think, bloody hell, we could have been sat 10th, if things had been a bit more our way and so on. So yeah, I'm happy to be in the Premier League, but as any fan wants, you always want better for your club. So I would like to have seen us at least a bit higher up. But what I am happy about is that we're not adrift, we're not cut away from anyone, and that there's still plenty of games to go. But I do want to see Forest play as the Forest that I know is inside them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just a couple of things to pick up on there. What the obvious one, why do you feel the home form has been so different to the away form? I mean, why do you feel Forest have struggled so much on the road? Because it's a massive contrast. I mean, no wins away from home, some heavy defeats. At home, you've beaten the likes of Liverpool, and you've looked pretty competitive against sides that, no disrespect to Forest, are better. Why do you feel the side have struggled so much on the road? Is it a change of tactics? Is it something that Cooper does different on the road to what he does at the City grounds? I mean, what do you put it down to?
I honestly would say the number one reason why we're better at home is the fans.
Yeah.
The atmosphere in the City grounds at home games is unreal. I was there recently at the Brentford match, and it's just electric. It really is. The West Ham game, the first game back in the Premier League, that was a sight to behold. That got us over the line. We won our first game at home against West Ham. Yes, we rode our luck with a penalty miss, a great save by Hendo. But it's also then when you go away from home, the fans are still brilliant, but I think there's a bit of rabbit in headlights, if I'm being frank with you, mate, when it comes to, if you look at where we've taken heavy defeats, it's at some of the big boys, your Man Cities, your Arsenals, etc. And I feel like what Forest have been weak in is when they've conceded a goal away on the road, or sometimes when we've been up at home, is there's been that conceding quickly again, and suddenly the game becomes out of reach, and then suddenly you see the players' heads drop, and that's it. The game's done. Sometimes it could be done by half time, and you can't, and you don't feel that there's been enough tactics used within the match to then get us back into it, maybe get a quick goal, change the momentum, and so on. So that's why. But at the City grounds, that momentum is coming from the fans, and the fans are boisterous, whatever the score is, whatever the opponent is in front of us. Like you mentioned about the Liverpool match, they got us over the line 100% in that match, and a little bit of luck, but it was real determination. And I think that feeds down to the players as well when they get caught up in that atmosphere, which hopefully will be tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be going up to the City ground tomorrow, as you know, so I'm looking forward to kind of sampling that firsthand from the away end. Another thing that I think is a big positive for Forest, and I'm sure it's probably beyond what you expected, unlike us who went out in the third round of the Carabao Cup, unfortunately. We haven't won a domestic cup for, God, I think we've lost our last 6 or 7 finals. I was at both finals at Wembley last season, lost both of those. Haven't won a domestic trophy since 2017 FA Cup when we beat Man United 1-0. Thanks to an Eden Hazard penalty. So it's been a bit of a barren spell despite Champions League, World Champions and whatnot. But for Forest, the League Cup, and I think the League Cup for many teams outside perhaps the Big Four or Big Six, whatever you want to call it, represents a real good chance at getting a trophy, because you only have to win a few games, and then suddenly you're the semi-finals are there, and then it's Wembley. I mean, and Forest find themselves in the quarterfinals, and then a big win against Spurs in one of the earlier rounds, and a favourable tie at home to Wolves, so the place in the semi-finals up for grabs. I mean, just how important has this cup run been to this season? Has it taken you by surprise a little bit?
It's been a bit of a debate amongst the Forest fans, because we started off the run at Grimsby, and you mentioned a good point, the fact that you don't have to play that many games to suddenly find yourselves in the quarters and the semis, whereas we're used to having to play from the beginning. It's not because of the Premier League now, we get to jump in at the third round. So I remember we were playing Grimsby, and it was a bit of, so what, Premier League is more important. Then we had the Spurs game. Obviously, my brother's a Spurs fan, so I quite enjoyed that one. And then suddenly you find yourself, looking ahead and thinking, well, there's a chance of Wembley here, and potentially, some European football maybe as well. But what we're interested in more so than anything is if you look at the cup run from last year for us with the FA Cup, where we beat Leicester, we beat Arsenal. I feel like we got screwed by VAR against, Liverpool. But we pushed them till the 80-odd minute before they could beat us 1-0. And that built us momentum into our promotion season. So how I'm looking at it this season is, if we can get it, so be it. It'll be fantastic. But if we can use it to build momentum, to get a bit more game time, I think the more games we get on the pitch this season, the better for Forest. It gives us more time to gel these players together. It gives Cooper a bit of chance to experiment and get the right players in the right position. But it also just gives us that winning atmosphere. And we really are a different team. For whatever reason in the cup, we're playing some scintillating football. And I'd wish they'd move some of that form across into the Premier League. But I'll take it, mate. I'll take it. Yes, it's not a Champions League, but it's silverware, and we've won that League Cup plenty of times. So it's one of those trophies that we quite enjoy winning.
No, for sure. Just a slight tangent. I just wanted to quickly talk to you about someone who was very good at Forest last year. Jed Spence. Obviously, got the move to Spurs in the summer. He's barely kicked a ball for him. Are you Are you surprised that like that? Were you surprised to see him go to Spurs? And are you equally as surprised to see him literally struggling to get a kick, considering how good for Forest he was last year?
He was probably one of my favorite players last season. He brought out the best even in Brennan Johnson. Those two down the right hand side were a force to be reckoned with, and they ripped it up against Prem level teams with Leicester, Arsenal, etc. Were we surprised that he didn't stay? No, because his main motivation was to move back to London. His mum's down in London, and he wanted to be closer to home. So we did understand that. Although I still would have liked to see him staying at Forest. However, I'm shocked that he can't break into that Spurs team where you've got Emerson Royale in front of him and Doherty, who are not great right wing backs. And the system that Spurs play in their 3-5-2, he would slot right in because that was a system we were using really heavily last season. We still love him at the City Ground. He got a great reception when he came for the 2 games we've had against Spurs already. He bloody nearly scored in the League One. That was interesting when he came on last. I don't know how we had all felt about that one. But he is one of those better players. And over the summer, there was a clear link when we were being linked to Nico Williams, ex-Liverpool Fulham player. And the debate still happens, mate, in the Forest fan base. Who's better, Williams or Jed Spence? And should we have got Jed Spence or should we have forced his hand? But it was taken out of anyone's control. Him and Cooper sat down and spoke in the summer. He made it clear he wanted to be closer to home. And, you got to respect those feelings from the player.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, I would agree. So, in the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge, it's terrible. I don't know if you've ever been, but like in the last few years, like the atmosphere is awful amongst the home fans. I know we discussed it on your show yesterday. Like, I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously, you get a lot of tourists and whatnot. I'm just not sure. I mean, I don't think it helps that again, Chelsea, being kind of a trendy area, you tend to attract perhaps not like I don't want to say not proper fans. It's a little bit disrespectful, but you know what I mean. You tend to attract like people that just go, oh, that'd be nice to go to. Let's go to Chelsea, as in like a thing to tick off, like a nice sort of thing to do before going and doing whatever. Whereas like places like Forest, I've been up to Newcastle this season. Cities that live and breathe football, and you can tell the difference. And I think with one city teams as well, I think that makes a massive difference. So I'm looking forward to sampling that tomorrow. But I want to look ahead to January briefly, mate. Obviously, we know 20 odd players in the summer. First question is there money to spend in January?
Yeah, there is. Marinakis, our owner, is hellbent on staying in the Premier League. He's, his ambitions are top 6. He said it jokingly after the playoffs when emotions were running high to Jim White. And Jim White's been running with that line all since the summer, But the actual intention behind it is correct. He wants big things for Forest. He owns Olympiacos. He's had nothing but success with them in the Greek league there. So he will strengthen the club, and he gets the club, he gets the city, and he understands what we want. So the connection between Marinakis and the Forest fans is solid. The connection with Steve Cooper and the city and things like that, they understand. So they've got that hierarchy in place. But he will spend in January because his philosophy and his thinking is quite simple. Is it worth risking, the 180 million we'll be getting from the Premier League for the sake of not spending 30, 40 million during the window? The return is completely worth it. He's already spent about 150 million in the summer. He kept us going through COVID, keeping the lights on while things weren't as rosy as they are now. And it's a case of, he will do what he has to do. And I don't think I've spoken to a Forest fan who doesn't like Marinakis. His son, some have issues with. His son is trying to elbow his way in and to get a bit too much involved in the club affairs. He's trying to be, that poster boy when we have a big signing and everything, and he wants to be the one who reveals it. But with that said, I'll take that over some of the ownerships we've had in recent times. So I think the money will be there to spend. The question is, will they spend it in the right places? I've not been too happy with some of the links we've had so far in terms of the positions they're looking at. I've got quite strong feelings about where I think Forest needs strengthening. But there has been panic buying as well, as we saw on the last day of the transfer window in the summer. We got lucky with one of those. Aurier has been an absolute revelation. I know ex-Spurs boys, so you're not probably a huge fan of his. But we've had likes of Bardet who came to us, and he hasn't had a kick of the ball. And
Hasn't he
we've
just gone to
already,
Sevilla?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So we terminated his loan. It was a bit of a cloak and dagger thing with him, because apparently there was an agreement from October where we agreed not to play him on the pitch, to allow him to be able to be reloaned out, because had he played for Forest, there's a rule that doesn't allow you to represent 3 clubs in a season. So that one's baffled us. We don't know why we would agree to something like that. And the question then stands, well, wait, why did we sign him? And more importantly, why didn't we play him out? Sevilla are a decent club. I know they're struggling this year in the league and La Liga, but we as Forest fans know we need pace at the back, and he's a lot faster than some of the stuff we've got. And he's not been used, and it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned you've got strong feelings about what areas you think need to be improved. You know, how many players do you expect to come in, and what would you say are the key areas? You know, if Forest are going to stay up and get out of this relegation scrap, which obviously you guys are in, what areas need to be addressed in order to give you the best chance of staying up?
Well, the areas I think need to be addressed, and I think most Forest fans would agree with me. They may argue with priorities. My priority is centre back. We do not have pace at the back. All of our centre backs are not blessed with any pace. I'm talking about Steve Cook. I'm talking about Worrell. I'm talking about Bolly from Wolves that we brought in. And even our better centre back in Scott McKenna, he's not that blessed for pace. The one player we do have that is fast, strong, athletic is Moussa Niakate, but he picked up an injury in our second game against West Ham, and it was a hamstring injury that has dragged on until now. So unfortunately, with him out, and we don't know when he'll be returning, all we know is sometime in the new year, we desperately need some pace. And a ball, I'd call it a ball playing centre back for me would be number one on my shopping list. I'd then add into that a striker. We need a goal scoring, Prem experienced striker, someone that the ball can stick to up front to allow the midfield to run, around that striker. Owoni's been okay, but he can score goals, but he's not one for great control. He's come with a good reputation from the Bundesliga. I think he's got about 15 or 16 goals in the league last season, but he's not been really given a run in the team currently. Cooper's going with this false 9. So the Forest fans are questioning, well, if we even did buy a striker, is Cooper looking to play a number 9? Or is he not playing a number 9 now because he doesn't quite fancy Owoni there? And we don't have any depth in that position either. Our only other striker is a guy called Sam Surridge, who the Forest fans love. He was brilliant for us last season, a great finisher of the ball. But there's a debate whether or not he's Premier League quality. So those would be my 2 positions. And if there was any, pennies left in the kitty, then I'd like a good CDM, a solid CDM. Once Kante's back and fit, mate, let's talk and see if we can.
Mate, but to be honest, I mean, he's might now surprisingly end up staying. There was a report in the Athletic a few days ago, saying that he's actually pretty close to now staying, which was quite a surprising U-turn, because myself and many Chelsea fans fully expected him to kind of just to move on, and for us to kind of start afresh. Obviously Enzo Fernandez potentially coming in, a ridiculous price really, but are you
going to pay the release clause on that? Because they're talking about 120 mil or something.
Yeah, so the release clause is 120 million euros. But what Chelsea want to do and are looking to do, and just all that needs to be agreed is for Benfica to give it the green light. But Chelsea want, like with Christopher and Nkunku, Chelsea want to pay more than the actual release clause is, but then that enables them to structure the payment terms more favorably. So they'd be able to pay a larger amount up front and then stagger the rest of the payments over installments or whatever those installments are. And that way, you avoid having to pay the whole 120 million in one go, because if you pay the release clause, it's got to all be paid up front. And for FFP and things like that, it's not ideal. So yeah, we're looking to obviously. I mean, Enzo's given Chelsea the green light. You know, the contracts are agreed, personal terms won't be a problem. It's just now whether Benfica accept this deal or they don't. So, like, it's exciting times for sure. But I mean, I don't know. I always look at it, and I mean, look, I did not going to pretend that I knew much about Enzo Fernandez because I didn't. You know, I watched him a bit in the Champions League with Benfica. Obviously, saw him at the World Cup much more, and he looks a great player. But there's just a little part of me that thinks, whilst massively excited, big money signings for Chelsea generally haven't worked out. I'm not saying that this would be the case, but it always makes me feel a little bit skeptical. And then there's the fact that, like, you always worry, will he adapt to the Premier League? I'm not saying that he's not good enough to. Of course he is, but then there's also the other external factors. You know, if he comes in for over £100 million, it's automatically the most expensive signing in Premier League history, surpassing Jack Grealish. And then every misplaced pass or whatever it is, scrutiny's on him. Oh, this guy's crap. You know, why have we spent all that money? You know, media will just hone in on every little thing that he does wrong because of that added pressure. I'm not saying the lad can't deal with it. You know, he's won the Copa America, he's run the World Cup already. But those are all things when you're a young kid at 21 years of age, you come into a new country, like everything you do is just going to be put under a microscope. And I just worry, whether it was him or whether it was someone else, you know, it's a lot to take on your shoulders at that age.
Yeah, but you're right, because when you look at what's happening with Nunes right now at Liverpool, he is being scrutinized for every miss, you know, every half chance he's getting and everything like that. But I guess that comes with the territory. It's not his fault, or it won't be the Argentinian's fault when he comes in, that the price tag that's been paid for is on his neck. That's part and parcel of football. You know, they don't dictate the price. That's dealt with between clubs and agents, etc. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. We're getting the same thing on a lower scale with Dennis, for example. Dennis at the moment is splitting our fan base. I think he's a great player. He scored a lot of goals in the Premier League last season for a pretty crappy Watford team. And I think there's a lot of potential in him. But he's another one that's not really being utilized by Cooper. He's not getting a run in the team. We spent 20 million on him.
I was going to say.
Now a lot of the fans are turning, saying, you know, what a waste of 20 mil. Let's get rid of him in January. And for me, it's no. He's got that Prem experience.
Crack. You've got to get a fair crack as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I obviously don't know as much about Forest as you do, but it would seem a bit odd with you saying that, you know, a number 9, someone that scores goals is desperately needed. You've got someone that you spent 20 million quid on, which, all right, might not seem a lot, but for a club that's just come up, it's a lot of money to spend on a player. And he scores goals. I'm not saying, you know, he's prolific by any accounts, but he's probably the most prolific striker that you've got on the books at the moment. And for him to not really get a run at centre forward does seem a little bit odd to me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think he should?
It's baffling.
Is the general consensus that he should be starting more regularly through the middle?
Well, it's a debate. I personally think he's more of a left winger cutting in, which is where he played for Watford. He got, I think, 12 goals last season for them, and they were rubbish last season. I'm sure when you guys played them, you found that was the case. It's more so that because he's not getting a run in the team, and because he's being used as a last-minute sub, and he gave away a pass against Manchester United the other day, you know, that led to their 3rd goal. That's being highlighted and that's being held against him. But what I like about him is when he's getting the ball, he's attacking, he's going forward. Yes, he may lose it. Yes, he may put a bad pass in. But you should be able to forgive that, you know, because at least he's progressing forward. Where what we're seeing a lot of the time, especially away from home, is this sideways zombie style passing back to the goalkeeper. The opponents then start to press you. The keeper just punts it forward and the ball recycles back, you know. So at least with him, I'm seeing something a little different. I'm seeing someone who's not afraid to lose the ball, but the fans need to get off his back and allow him to have a run in that team, you know, and really show what he's worth. And just remember how many goals he did score last season in a struggling team as well. But as a number 9, I'm not convinced he is the physique for a number 9. He's very fast. He's only about 5'9" or 10, I think. I would like someone with a bit more presence up front. But Cooper has used him up front, and he scored his only goal this season when he was playing up front against Aston Villa. Surprisingly enough, it was a header from across. But he can jump quite high, but he's just not being utilized. There's certain players, the debate happening in the Forest fan base is, were all these player Cooper signings or not? And it's something we're not used to as Forest fans. about managerial lack of involvement sometimes in the recruitment process. But it's something I think we need to get used to, because that's the shape of how Premier League clubs work. It's not how it was in the Cloughy days, where Cloughy would have the say on who's coming in and who's coming out. So we have to understand that times have evolved, and there's a recruitment team set there. Yes, the manager will have some input, but at the end of the day, these decisions are taken at a higher level. And I'm sure that will be the case, with Chelsea and with all the other major Premier League teams. And that's why we have to modernize our thinking when it comes to how the fans see recruitment at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just get to this and I'll come back to something else. Do you think under Roman Chelsea started the ruination of fair competition in football? I don't know. It's hard to say, really. I mean, you look at things now and you see PSG state-owned clubs, Newcastle state-owned clubs, City are owned by Abu Dhabi, Newcastle by Saudi Arabia, PSG by Qatar. These are clubs that are owned by entire countries. Look, I understand why people look at Chelsea and they think, it's kind of the first new money, as it were, in football. And we spent a lot of money and we've been very successful over the last 20 years. But I think at the time, people hate whatever team's winning. Winning brings haters. Like, if you're not hated, it means you're not doing well, basically. And it's at the end of the day, it's just like the winning. You just kind of you brush it off. And Chelsea have had a reputation for we've ruined football, you're dirty money at the club, and all these things. And it's like you understand rival fans say things. They get annoyed because they see their club not doing as well, or for whatever reason, or not having got as much money to spend. There'll always be a divide in football where the top clubs have got a lot more money to spend than other clubs, and that's the way it is. And whether that changes or not, who knows? I suspect probably not. It's never going to be an entirely level playing field, and that's unfortunately the way the Premier League is. What I would say is that every single club that's ever been successful in the Premier League in recent years has spent money. You have to spend money to
apart from Leicester, mate. But yeah,
apart from Leicester, of course. But
yeah,
you look at Premier League teams coming up now. I mean, when was the last time a Premier League team, a Championship team had come up, and now they're spending 20-25 million pounds on players like it's just normal. You've got players in the Championship that are suddenly being bought for 20, 25, 30 million quid. Football's evolving. The money in the game is ridiculous. And I think some of it's jealousy, some of it's spite, and maybe some of it has got grounds. But ultimately, if you don't spend money, someone else is going to spend money and you're going to get left behind. You've got to spend to stay competitive.
I don't think you're the ones that started the cycle. I think you broke the cycle in many respects, because as a person growing up in that era when Abramovich came in, I was sick of Man United winning the title. And when Abramovich came in and you started to see, the Mourinho era, it was Ranieri first, wasn't it, when he first came in, and you started to see these big names. It was actually quite interesting to watch how Chelsea were going to evolve and hunt down United. Yes, after that, the money did start to get crazy. I remember one of the images was because I think you bought Duff, wasn't it? From Duff, Blackburn back then, if I remember rightly, as a kid.
It was a great player
there were Chelsea fans walking around, and all of them had on the back of their shirts Minted, was their name. So I do remember things like that, and I think that's what caused a lot of the fan base to not like what was happening. But from someone who was growing up watching Man United cheat their way to the title, bully their way into signings. I remember when they signed the likes of Cantona and how they forced their hand. They took Roy Keane off us, players like that. You could see the evolvement, but the evolvement was really coming more so from Sky at that time, changing it into the Premier League, pumping that money in. You could argue about the hierarchy of how they were dishing out the game times, the live matches, the revenue coming from Sky Sports. No one really talks about that. And then the involvement comes obviously to Manchester City, who I think modeled themselves off you guys and took the good things from what you did, ignored some of the mistakes you made, and did a bit of a better evolution, because they came in and chucked money. Do you remember Robinho coming into Manchester City back in the day?
He was going to come to Chelsea. I think he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't quite sure he even realised he was signing for City. I remember there was a clip that did the rounds where he thought he was going somewhere else, or I can't remember if it was exactly that, but
it was Berbatov, wasn't it, as well? He was going to go City, then ended up at Man United. There was a lot of that. I remember that was one of the first January windows. But it was that involvement has happened. Look, I've got to say, I don't mind it happening. I have questioned over the years sometimes your style of play, especially under the Mourinho era.
Yeah.
I found it sometimes a bit too passive, where you'd see Chelsea go 1-0 up and then just sit back, where if they put their foot down, they could really put a team to the sword. So sometimes the style of play wasn't as exciting as, say, when Man City started to evolve. But what they did to football has changed the shape of the game, and has been part of it. And I don't think it's a bad thing. If it means that the likes of Forest can now come up and spend 150 million. We spent in the summer window more than we've spent in our whole history. You add every year together, it doesn't equate to what we spent in one window. That Sky money, the other money that comes with the Premier League, is going to keep Forest going, the lights on, and is going to keep us, in a great spot. And that's because the Premier League money is what it is. So I don't really have too much of a problem with it.
No, I don't either. I mean, I even look at something like Newcastle, and I actually am pleased for Newcastle fans. Geordies live and breathe football. They absolutely love it. They got a great manager in Eddie Howe. And all right, you can argue about the legitimacy or the morality of being taken over by essentially Saudi Arabia, and then they say it's a public investment fund and it's separate. I think we all know that's slightly pulling the wool over our eyes. But what I would say is that I'm delighted to see Newcastle doing well, because historically they're a great Premier League team. They've had to put up so much with Mike Ashley. Steve Bruce didn't do a great job there. And it's good to see. And I think a strong Newcastle is great for the Premier League. And these things wouldn't potentially be possible without this ridiculous investment from wherever it comes from. So I think whilst there can be perhaps perceived setbacks, it also creates massive opportunities for clubs and for fans to go and do things that they couldn't have dreamt of doing. So I think whilst there are drawbacks and it can be criticised, I think the positives far outweigh the negatives on this one for me.
Yeah, and the thing that everyone's got to remember is, because of these positive and the draws to it, we are seeing the best players in the world come into the Premier League, and we're getting first dibs on a lot of these. I remember growing up in an era where every player wanted to go to Real or Barca.
Yeah,
Real and Barca would come and pick the cream of whoever they wanted. So these changes do have negatives. It is gonna stretch the divide between the elitist and the other clubs. So, where Forest will fit into that, we'll have to wait and see what the future holds. But at least it gives you things to aspire to. I was against the Super League. I thought that would have been a bit stupid to happen. It was good to see how the fans came together and did stop that, so that we can still have the elements of what we love in our English game. But it's, we do have to be careful. There's got to be a limit. Forest have been done before with financial fair play, and we weren't allowed to buy players for a couple of seasons, and that did hurt us. So I still don't think financial fair play is in the right place at the moment. They are, I understand, changing those rules in the next year or two, but we'll see who that benefits, because the rich will carry on getting richer and the poor will carry on getting poorer. That's just the fact of life. That's not just in football.
Just going to get to a couple of things in the chat. Yeah, I did know JT was at Forest, obviously quite a while ago, right at the start of his career.
Very young,
he was on loan. Was he good for you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell. You could tell from the off. Yeah, the star in the making, the quality player.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let me get to a couple of other bits. What we've got here. Enzo possibly. There's been no talks today, but they're hoping to resume talks tomorrow and obviously into next week. Hope Chelsea are pushing for a deal to be done next week. They think it can be done. It's basically just waiting for the green light from Benfica and President Rui Costa to kind of accept the terms of the deal. And the only thing that needs to be sorted out is the structure of the payments and how that fee is going to be paid. So, mate, hopefully next week there will be some more news on Enzo, and hopefully he could be unveiled. One thing I wanted to do before I get your thoughts on Chelsea and Graham Potter, talks about a number 9, the Brazilian lad. Forgotten his name now, which is not great.
Scarpa.
That's the one. Is he enough to solve your goal scoring problems? How much expectation is there on him, and how excited are Forest fans about him?
I've been supporting Forest a long time. There's certain players that we've signed that I've been excited about. I can go back to Brian Roy, who was one of my all-time favorite players. I remember Van Hooijdonk coming to Forest.
Oh, yeah.
Who excited me, who scored goals. And then there's Scarpa, or Scarpinia, as the Palmeiras fans tell us we need to call him now. He's an unknown to a lot of us. Forest fans obviously have known about him for 6 to 8 months because this deal was happening over the summer. And there's been a lot of YouTube clips watched and what have you. So a lot of the fan base have made their mind up off YouTube clips. However, I've been able, luckily in the position we're in, I've been able to speak to a lot of Palmeiras fans, a lot of other fan channels they have there. And they are so sad to see him go. But it's one of those ones. It's an interesting situation because a lot of the times when you lose a beloved player, you know, he becomes a turncoat, Judas, and so on. They wish him nothing but success because of what he's done for them in the last couple of years. And he comes to Forest with a great reputation from the Palmeiras fans on a free. It's been absolute great business being done here. He's 28 years old. He can play anywhere across the line, be it right wing, cam, left wing, or as he played against you guys at left back when you played Palmeiras. And he's already had some games with us in the friendlies. He was able to train with the squad and went with us. And yes, I know they're only friendlies, but he looked sharp. He looked like he was gelling the team together, coordinating, passing and everything. He's amazing. And what Simon says there is really true. He's really into his skateboarding. He's very relaxed. He just literally on his first day from landing in Heathrow, drove up to Nottingham, got his skateboard out and went out skating in the middle of town. It's just lovely to see that kind of person. And he's very interactive with the fans there. But what he brings and what we are things that we are missing, he brings someone who can cross a ball. He brings someone who's brilliant from a dead ball situation, be it a corner or a free kick or what have you. And he brings someone who can progress the ball forward and link play together. And the real question on the Forest fans' lips is it going to be easy for him to transfer over from a Brazilian league, as we, sometimes we do look down disrespectfully as the Premier League down at other leagues, but is he going to be able to bring that skill and what he's been producing for Palmeiras across to the Premier League? I think he will be, because he has that attitude about him, that carefreeness, and I think he will work. Will Cooper deploy him straight away is the question I would ask. Cooper's one of these people who, if it's not one of his signings, like in Morgan Gibbs-White or someone like that, he likes to bed them in and bring them in gently into the team while they get their philosophy. But what's in Scarpa's favor is he's fully fluent in English. He's always wanted to play in the Premier League. So this is a dream being fulfilled for him, and he's hungry and ready to do it. I think he's going to bring a lot, but he can't do it on his own. So that's my worry for him. My other worry is we are hyping him up through the roof in Nottingham. We think he's the second coming, and most Forest fans haven't seen him kick a ball, but we like what we've seen. So it's going to be a bit like Enzo. It's going to be one of those unknowns, and we're going to have to see how he develops, but it's risk-free. He's coming to us on a free, and let's see what he can bring. Unfortunately, he can't start tomorrow.
It's not registered in time. We'll have to wait and see him.
Southampton midweek, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a massive game as well, by the way.
Huge.
But yeah, I want to move on to Chelsea. I always find it interesting getting sort of thoughts from people outside of the Chelsea fan base on the club. Rightly or wrongly, Chelsea's never too far from many headlines. What I want to start on, before I talk about the team and the form and whatnot, what are your thoughts on seeing a young British manager getting an opportunity at a top four side? Because it's something that hasn't happened before. I think it's something that's been needing to happen for a while. It's always been that the foreign coaches, British managers, you could perhaps argue, haven't really been good enough to be offered a crack. But we finally see it now. Potter's in at Chelsea. You know, a British manager getting an opportunity at a top side. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that could potentially pave the way for more English, British coaches to be given a crack at the top jobs in the Premier League?
Well, he's got a lot riding on his shoulders. I think looking at what I've seen at Chelsea over the years of watching football, I'd describe it as a revolving door. The philosophy was you come in, you win. If you stop winning, we'll bring someone else who can win. Again, I'm looking at it from an outsider's perspective. That's how I see it. I don't necessarily disagree with that approach because you could argue you've had success off the back of it, which is fine. But you've never had that sustained success. What you'd tend to find is Chelsea would win the league, and then suddenly the next season it would be off a cliff edge, and then you're fighting again to rebuild. And it always felt that Chelsea were either winning the league or rebuilding, winning the league or rebuilding. So you've never had that sustained structure in there. In terms of Potter coming in, I feel like it's the owners putting a bit of a statement saying, this is our man. We've seen how he's developed Brighton. What he's done at Brighton can't be undermined. It's I would liken him to the likes of Eddie Howe in terms of his approach towards football. I like how both of them think. I like their philosophies. But this is a big step for him. You saw when Moyes went to Manchester United from Everton and he couldn't handle it. My question would be, has Potter got it in him to sustain that pressure that a draw is like a loss when it comes to, the teams that are fighting for the title? So he hasn't got margin for error. I've been surprised to see, the results you had pre the World Cup where you lost 3 or 4 games. And it didn't seem like there was too much turning on him. I think he's still got a bit of a honeymoon period that he can get away with. Do I think long term he can hack it? I'm not sure. Evidence would point to the fact that it needs someone with a big personality at the the harsher end of the table who can drive results and can deal with the pressure. I think the question I would have about Potter is, how does he deal with the pressure when Chelsea are in a real dogfight, be it if you are fighting for 4th spot or maybe a bit higher? How does he deal with that pressure? But then you flip it and you think of how Arteta was last season with Arsenal, how he cracked under the pressure, lost that top 4 race from a winning position. And look what they've gone on to. Bloody hell, man. They're 7 points clear now. So I think that model needs to be taken into account when looking at Potter and what he does. I think he needs to be given time. If you've brought him in, these risks should have been taken by your hierarchy. They would have assessed it all. And I think they would have to give him at least a couple of seasons to see how he develops. Will the fans give him that? I don't know, because you're asking your fan base to change their philosophy from that revolving door into putting a trust in a manager. So I think he'll be okay. You've got great players at the end of the day. You could argue a lot of no-namers could have come in and managed that team quite well. But there's a difference between managing them well and winning trophies. And that's going to be the question against Potter for me.
Yeah, no, I think there's a kind of an I don't want to. I can't speak for the whole fan base. There's always going to be sections of the fan base that don't like the manager from the moment they set foot in the building. But for me, I look at it and I just think, do you know what? Right, we're in a unique situation here. We've got new owners in for the first time in 20 odd years. It's a new way of doing things. We're bringing in for the first time in 20 plus years. We're not bringing in a manager with a global reputation who's got trophies galore on the CV. We're very much, it's very much a new approach, and a new approach requires patience. And whether you look, ultimately, I fully back Potter, but ultimately, it might turn out that it doesn't work out for him and he's not that guy. But what he does deserve is the time to allow people to decide whether he is or isn't that guy. And football teams aren't built overnight, and it takes time. And I understand that, and that Chelsea it's a results-based business at the business end of the table. It's a results-based business wherever you are. But even as you said, even a draw at Chelsea is massively highlighted. Feels like a loss. And despite all the things you say, he hasn't bought any of his own players in. The squad's a bit of a mess. The club's been in turmoil. There's been so much going on. Ultimately, you've got to overcome that, and you have to put the points on the board somehow. And there are mitigating factors for Potter. The fact that he's not had any transfer windows to bring in any of his players. There's not been much time on the training ground to work on ideas, to get tactics across, to try and formulate an identity. And these are all mitigating factors. But ultimately, once you're on the football pitch and you're losing matches, fans get annoyed and they don't think about these things, and all logic goes out the window. So whilst
It
he
is.
has got time for sure, and he deserves that time. And I think people are accepting that this season is, I don't want to say it's a free hit because it's not, but there's an acceptance that this season is like, right, just come in. You've been parachuted into a mess that has been years in the making. Just do the best you can, and then in January, in the summer, bring in the players that you want, and then next season we'll have more of an idea of what Graham Potter's Chelsea is going to be about, and we can judge more then next season. Because right now, this season, I think, whilst we do want to try and finish in the top four or get as close to that as we can, to expect Potter to work miracles when he's never worked at this level before, he's never managed in the Champions League before this season.
Yeah, that is true.
It's expecting too much in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we have the similar debate about Steve Cooper from our end at Forest. Obviously, what he did last season, he will forever be in my heart for it. But as an objective fan, and I remain objective, I do ask myself the question, has he got the experience and the managerial know-how to deal with the Premier League? I've seen a lot of things that have really made me question his ability within the Premier League. And is this a step too far for him? So, look, the majority of the Forest fan base are Cooper till we die kind of thing. I'm not in that boat. I'm in the more pragmatic boat of, we're here in the Premier League. I don't want to spend another 23 years trying to get back in it if the worst happens to Forest. If we're here, we need to make some cutthroat decisions if that needs to be the case. But the fan base feel he's earned the right to have a full crack at it this season, and I understand that. However, we've got to start getting results. If we don't start getting results, then you might as well say goodbye from now in terms of what happens next season. This is cutthroat in the Premier League. And I don't think that any other club with the results we had 2 or 3 games before the break of the World Cup would have stuck with Cooper. It's the fans that kept Cooper in before the World Cup, and he has to repay us for that loyalty now, and he has to show us he's learning and adapting. So it's always, it's the unknown, isn't it? You don't know how they would do if they carried on. You don't know who you'd replace someone with. So it's always a lottery, isn't it?
No, it definitely is. Before we get to the game eventually, this one here from Dino in the chat. It'd probably be a bit easier for you than it would be for me. But if you had to take one player,
it's just
Chelsea,
as hard, mate. No, I'm not having that.
I'll tell you what I do, and it's a little bit of a cop out. But because Reece James injured, we desperately need a right back. I'd take Serge Aurier.
Oh, an ex-Spurs player.
Well, yeah, but once they've got, we're desperate. We need a right back big time. So
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. Aurier has been our player of the season, up there with Ryan Yates. He bought for free. He's an absolute revelation, and he's not. When he came in, again, I've mentioned my brother's a Spurs fan. He goes, "Be careful, he's a walking red card." There's been none of that. He's been almost a leader on the pitch. So you're making a good choice there. For me, I mean, I guess I can't take Reece James seeing that he's injured. Oh, God. Kante would be my second choice. I've always admired Kante. I'd probably take... I was looking at your back too, thinking I want someone with pace, and you haven't really got that.
Not really any pace, no.
Yeah. Then I was like, okay, my second thing we need strengthening is a striker. You're not really playing a striker. Oh, it's tough for me as well, mate. I'm going to cop out and say I'll take Kante when he's fit. Kante would do wonders for Forest.
I mean, it's almost like having 2 players if you take Kante.
Anyway. It is, yeah, exactly.
Chukwuemeka was 20 mil, 10 mil to Villa plus 10 mil in add-ons. I don't know how attainable those add-ons are. Exciting prospect. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him. He's obviously had injury problems and a few promising cameos from the bench under Potter. I expect him to be in the squad tomorrow. I don't expect him to start, but maybe he'll get some minutes from the bench. But he's an exciting prospect, and we're building, there's this kind of project 2030, quote unquote, that Chelsea are looking to, obviously sign some of the best youngsters from around the world, around Europe, and build a squad of players, majority of them aged under 25, to kind of hit their prime years at Chelsea. We've got the Chukwuemeka's in, we've got Casadei in from Inter Milan, who looks promising. Amari Hutchinson from Arsenal, Andre Santos is coming from Vasco da Gama, promising midfield player. We've obviously got Fofana's coming from Molde. Don't know an awful lot about him, but I think I trust that the club have done their due diligence.
Got another Fofana. Bloody hell. Is he going to be fit?
Another Fofana. We got Datro Fofana, but the club are going to look at him. I mean, he's been at Molde in Norway. He scored 15 goals in the Norwegian league. He's not. I think Potter's going to look at him in training, but by all accounts, he's probably going to go out on loan. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we spent 100-odd million on Enzo in January. We haven't replaced Broja yet. I don't know. It's not a bottomless pit of money. So if we do spend that 100 million on Enzo, I think that you could potentially see Fofana end up staying for 6 months just to fill that space from Broja and then go out on loan next season. I'm not sure, but it's exciting to see us, signing youngsters.
Broja for me was one who got linked to Forest. Sorry, the neighbours have decided to start New Year's early.
I've got loads of fireworks as well.
Bloody hell. I thought someone was shooting through my window. Broja for me, I would have really liked to see come into Forest. I know he's got his injury now and isn't going anywhere, unfortunately, but there was strong links for him being loaned out. I do take issue, look, of all the stuff we've talked about with Chelsea, I've never liked the way you guys have just spread the wealth around on the youth, brought them all in and then loaned them all out, and whatever works you keep. I feel that's too much of a monopoly going on. I know the other big clubs do it as well. Bloody hell, they're going. So for me, I have never liked that. Yes, we have profited from it. We had the likes of Jimmy Garner coming into Forest last year from Man United, so we've seen the rewards of that in the Championship. But that to me, and there are rules in place now, aren't there, where you can't just
the loan rules have changed now. But look, I think that the loan system at Chelsea has come in for strong criticism in the past, and we have had over the years a ridiculous amount of players on loan. There's been some seasons where we've had 50 plus players out on loan. The rules have now changed. The loan model does work at Chelsea, and it has worked. It doesn't always work, but there are obvious examples of where the loan system has worked really well. You look at the likes of, I know Tomori's not at the club anymore, but had a very successful loan at Derby County. Mason Mount, another example, out on loan at Derby. Reece James went on loan to Wigan, and that really helped him. There are areas where
going to Palace last season. He was brilliant there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it does work, but I do get your point in terms of the fact that there comes a point where you're just hoarding players, to stop other teams from signing them when you've got really no intention of using them yourself. But I think now I do feel there's a bit of a change at Chelsea in this regard. And whilst ultimately are all these youngsters going to work out for Chelsea? No. But what we're trying to do now is, similarly to what Brighton and other teams have done, is find these players before they end up becoming 60, 70, 80 million pound players. That's the key. And I think everyone's trying to do that. And whilst not all these are going to work out, I think it's almost win-win for Chelsea, because you get these young players in, you don't pay an awful lot for them. If it works out, you've picked up a great player for your team on the cheap. And if it doesn't, ultimately, you're probably going to sell them for a profit anyway. So have you really lost?
We're starting to do that a bit as well. We've brought in Brendan Aguilera, I think his name is. He's 18 years old, bit of a wonder kid, but we've loaned him back out. We've got a few going on loan and went on loan in the summer. So for us to trying to build a similar structure, obviously not to the crazy large scales that Chelsea are doing it, but again, it's models that most Premier League clubs are starting to adopt right now. You just see it more highlighted at the more elite side of the league. I'm just looking at the comments, and Mason Mount tomorrow. Is it going
to be
any sheep connection, and he's going to be getting it. So good luck to him tomorrow.
Let's move on to the game then. Obviously, first, everyone wants to get off to a great start for the new year. You want to get 3 points on the board. From a Forest perspective, what are you expecting? What do Forest need to do well that perhaps they haven't been doing well in recent weeks in order to try and pick a result up?
Attack. We've been adopting this bloody low block football, which I detest. I detest it. It's ugly on the eye. You can only really watch it as a fan and, look through your tinted glasses. And for me, it shows a lack of kahunas. And I want to see us take the Premier League and not be scared. As much as I don't like Fulham, I can't not respect what they've done this season.
Doing
Yes, they're
really
more
well.
of an established club. You know, they've yo-yoed up and down a bit. But when you watch them play, they attack the game and they go for it. And that's the kind of approach I'd like to see Forest taking, where, look, if we're going to lose, we lose. But let's lose going swinging, you know, rather than sit back, low block our way and try and get ourselves a draw. If you're playing for a draw, you're going to end up with a loss. Play for the win. If you concede a few, maybe you score a few. You know, the old Kevin Keegan tactics, so to speak. I'm not saying we need to go gun-ho tactics, but there needs to be a bit more of a balance in terms of not doing this low block. The problem we've got is we have to play a deep line because of how slow our centre-backs are. We can't risk being too high up the pitch. When we do go higher up the pitch, we are more expansive in the opponent's half. But then we're exposed with balls over the top against the lack of pace we have with the centre backs. So Cooper's still trying to find that balance. However, with the pace or lack of pace you guys similarly have with your centre backs, I think you may find yourself in the odd situation where you are in trouble against the pace we do have up front. And it's, will our front three be clinical enough to put those away tomorrow? History at the moment dictates that no, we haven't been clinical enough in front of goal. We probably haven't created as much as we could. But I do feel at the City Ground, it's a whole different perspective. I know I'm bigging it up now, and you're probably going to go on Tonkos tomorrow, but I do feel that the crowd plays such a significant role. And I personally don't think that should be the case. I love what the crowd does, but I feel the players should be motivated enough to then be the ones to inspire the crowd to be even louder. You put that combo in together and you're going to have yourself a hell of a club and a hell of an atmosphere. But at the moment, because our results are better at home, it's being 100% driven by the noise, by the atmosphere in the City Ground. Tomorrow will be no different. We've been starved of football at the City Ground since before the World Cup. So we're gagging to get back on home turf. So the atmosphere is going to be electric. It's sold out. We're really up for this one. We know we need the points. My fear is, will Forest be happy with the points? I think they would be. But we've got some serious games coming up where our season, you know, will be won and lost. We've got Southampton, we've got Bournemouth coming up, we've got Leeds, teams in and around us. And I don't want Forest just to throw this one away because they're looking ahead to those next few games. I say play the game in front of you, because we did beat Liverpool at the City Ground. We did beat West Ham at the City Ground. We beat Palace at the City Ground. It's not going to be easy for any team coming to us. And if Chelsea come there and expect, you know, or don't give the respect to Forest that they should do, then they'll be in for a rough time. I mean, we've talked about it before, haven't we? Some of the results you guys have had against the so-called lesser teams this season. So it's going to be interesting. As long as we don't concede early, it's going to be a tough game for both teams. And I think it's won and lost in that midfield, 100%.
No, it definitely will. I mean, that makes two of us that are not that clinical in front of goal. We really struggle to score goals as well. We don't tend to create a lot either. So it's going to really come down to, I think, a big battle as well is going to, obviously, Reece James is a massive miss, not just defensively, but also going forward as well. Azpilicueta's been a great pro for us, but no disrespect to him. He's not what he used to be. He doesn't get forward that much. He's lost the pace, what little pace he did have. And I think whoever ends up going up against Azpilicueta, that's going to be a real big battle and could be key. I mean, whoever ends up going there, they end up getting the better of Azpilicueta, which is very possible. Then there could be a lot.
And that could be Dennis or Lingard for us tomorrow. So that could be an interesting battle. You know, Lingard is 50-50.
Yeah. I mean, that could be an interesting battle. I mean, I look at it from a Chelsea perspective, and I think, you know, team news wise, we're still missing a lot of players of injuries. James, Chilwell, Fofana. Loftus-Cheek still out. Obviously, Kovacic is back. Whether he goes straight into the lineup or not remains to be seen. I suspect he'll probably be on the bench. I don't think there'll be too many changes from the Bournemouth game. Obviously, the one obvious change, James injured. So Azpilicueta will come in. Otherwise, I don't really expect any changes. Possibly Kovacic, maybe Hakim Ziyech might come in. But I think Pulisic and Sterling did pretty well against Bournemouth. Havertz did all right. And Aubameyang's useless. So, yeah, I think it will be pretty much unchanged. One forced change and maybe one additional change. But it will very much be pretty much the same team. And again, I agree with you. It's going to be that midfield battle. Can Jorginho get a hold of the game? Will Mount be able to sort of create anything in that 8 role? Are Sterling and Pulisic going to turn up? Is Havertz going to have his shooting boots on? There's a lot of ifs and buts, and it feels weird as a Chelsea fan because over the years we've been so used to going into games thinking, oh, you know what, we're pretty certain to win this game. And
I don't think there's going to be many goals either, if I'm being honest with you. You don't score many, we don't score many. Maybe it'll be the mistake here and there. I think it's going to be max a 2-goal difference, whichever way it swings.
Yeah.
Maybe Forest nick one like we did against Liverpool. I can't make my mind up, mate. I've changed the scoreline in my mind about 3 or 4 times over the last couple of days, depending on how depressed I am thinking back to the Man U game or how optimistic I am thinking ahead to the likes of Scarpa coming in. So, but we as fans, we can be fickle and we can, change our minds 100 times a day.
For sure.
At the moment, I'm feeling confident. We're coming up to match day. Ask me again once I've seen the team sheet, and that usually dictates a lot of my thought process these days. What centre-backs will he go with? What attackers will he go with? At the moment, even if he names an attacker, we don't know. That's true.
Yeah, it's depressing thought that, Haaland's got 21 Premier League goals now.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know what for you boys, but for us to have one player outscore us as a team is quite embarrassing, really.
You know what makes it worse? His dad made his name at Forest, didn't he? So
yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah,
yeah.
Haaland is out.
So we have a soft spot for him. We'd love him at Forest. Alfie, if you can sort your boy, bring him in. We'll take him. I'm sure we can squeeze him in somewhere.
Just literally last couple of things before I get to things in the chat before we round out. You mentioned the games coming up. You've got Southampton up next after Chelsea. Obviously, games against the likes of Liverpool's, Chelsea, City's, United's at home are kind of I would perhaps view it as not as maybe as a free hit as such. No one expects you to get anything, and if you pick up a point or 3, then it's a massive bonus. But those are the games where they're not going to be the difference between staying up and going down. So for you, I know it's a hard question. You never want your team to lose, but I suppose that you would rather lose this game per se if it meant you were going to win at Southampton next week, or do you not think like that?
I can't think like that. Yeah. I remember sitting down before the Liverpool match and I was looking at the next 5 games. We had Liverpool, we had, I can't remember now, we had the likes of Wolves, Villa, Brentford and Palace, I think, and Brighton. And I was looking at those games thinking, where are the points? Where are the points? I'd written off the Liverpool game. I'd written off the Brighton game. I read off a couple of others. And then we went and beat Liverpool. We went and beat Palace. We drew away to Brighton. It's a tough ground to go to. So I get what you're saying about the free hit, but I don't buy into it because the 3 points we got against Liverpool was so big. And it carried us. Yes, okay, we lost our next game, which was Arsenal, but we carried that momentum across into the next few games and started to eke out some results. I understand the logic behind it, but if that's how, I don't care if the fans want to think like that. I don't want the players to think like that. Otherwise, what's the point in turning up? We've seen today some crazy results. Everton drawing with Man City away. We've seen a few other results that just shocked me today. Newcastle not winning as well. And it's just a case of anything can happen. So if you're going to turn up, it's 11 v 11, 11 men on 11 men. All have some form of ability on the pitch. Don't write a game off. Yes, we have to. I think what it is, this isn't a must-win for Forest against Chelsea. But then if we lose to you or we lose heavily, how's the momentum going to be going into Southampton, going into Leicester, etc.? That's my worry about it. That's why we need to be able to take something from the game tomorrow. I'd say a point would be a fantastic result for Forest, but we need to start putting points on the board very quickly.
Ooh, I'm muted. Rivals. Well, Spurs is kind of the traditional one, I guess, but it's more kind of a banter rivalry in terms of the fact we don't really see them as a threat because they never win anything. I guess the main ones are the ones you're competing for trophies with. So City, Liverpool, United to an extent. Those are the big ones. Arsenal as well. I'd say that those are the main ones. But mate, let's round out score prediction. I know you can change your mind so often on these things, and we never like to predict our own teams to lose. But what would you realistically expect to happen tomorrow? If you had to kind of predict the score, what are you thinking?
Well, mate, I think, no offense, I think Liverpool are a better team than you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we beat them at home, so I'm going to go with that foundation to start with. We beat them with the likes of Van Dijk, Mo Salah in their team. So if we go about the game like we did against them, I think Forest can scrape this 1-0. I'm going 1-0.
I agree with you that I don't think there's going to be many goals in it. I think it'll be a 1-goal difference either way. I could easily see us losing this game. I wouldn't be surprised. I've been to some away games this season where I've kind of felt, we should perhaps have a decent chance in. We've been hammered. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, but I'm not fully confident on that, which sounds ridiculous supporting Chelsea. Not sure if you
I get it. I've seen you play. I'm impressed you think there'll be 3 goals tomorrow. That'll be interesting to see.
It would be nice to see. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win, but ultimately, like, I could easily see all 3 results on the table. Like, I think this is a really tough one to call. So yeah, I'll go for a Chelsea win, but it's more kind of heart rather than head on this one. But that seems like a good point.
Just say it straight, man. Just straight. So you think you're going to tonk us?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't expect us to win any games. I can't remember the last time we scored more than 2 goals in a game. So I mean, I think it was Milan back at the San Siro, back at Stamford Bridge when we played them in October time. So yeah, it's been a slog, but yeah, it seems like a good point to round out. Guys, thanks so much for getting involved in the chat with all your questions and stuff. Really appreciate you interacting, mate. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed this one.
Appreciate it.
Where can people go to find out more about what you guys do? Obviously, Forest Fan TV. Where should people go? I've tagged it in the description. It's in the title as well.
YouTube's main kind of hub of what we're doing. So at Forest Fan TV, we're also on Twitter, official FFTV as well on that. We're always interacting. We love talking with rival fans because we love nothing more than to banter and really enjoy the season. So yeah, any Chelsea fans, we'll be doing a watch along tomorrow for those who are not going to the match. So if the Chelsea fans want to tune into that, we'll be kicking that off about 10 past 4, I think, tomorrow. The game's at 4:30, isn't it? Kickoff.
Yeah,
it's a weird time. So yeah, if the Chelsea fans want somewhere to sit down and banter with the Forest fans, we'll be doing the live stream tomorrow. So feel free to come in, and I'll be giving you guys as good as I get. So
yeah, guys, make sure you subscribe to Forest Fan TV. Just past the 7K subscribers marks. Great stuff there. Loads of good content Forest-wise. So please go and subscribe to the channel. Link in the description and in the title as well. From myself, guys, I'll be back tomorrow with a match day vlog from the City ground. So make sure you tune in for that. I think we're going to do some stuff with the guys from Forest Fan TV, a few collabs on the vlogs there. So make sure you stay tuned for that one. Hopefully it'll be 3 points for Chelsea, but you can never be too sure. Vlog will drop after the game. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoy your New Year celebration. Thanks for all your support on the channel this year. And let's hope for a better 2023. Up the Chelsea.